Till now, what we were trying to do is create objects using new keyword, Java reserved new keyword. Now, what we will try to learn in this video is how to use constructors to create objects in a proper way. Welcome to aArambh, the first step towards your coding career, which would be a roadmap to the IT world. So without any further ado, let's jump into the IDE. So in this video, we will be learning about constructors, the types of it, default and parameterized, and constructor overloading, this keyword, and what is the difference between constructor and the method. So when we were trying to create a class in the previous video, what we would try to do is we used a Java reserved keyword class and we gave a name of the class. We ensured that the name of the class is starting with a capital letter. Then we tried to give two attributes to it. Let's say the two attributes that we are trying to assign to this class are string name and int age. If we don't know what is a constructor, what we try to do is we try to assign the values to the class. When we want to assign the values to the properties of the members of the class, initially what we will do is we will create an instance of the class using new keyword. Using new keyword, we'll create, first step is always to create an object or an instance of the class. Then we will assign the values in a manual way like this. s1.age equal to 20 and s1.name equal to any value. Let's say we took the name as Mohan. So instead of doing this, what we can do is in Java, we have a provision of using a constructor. What is a constructor? Constructor is a special method which is used to initialize the class. So let's go back to the topic of variables. When we are defining a variable int I, we just defined a variable int I, and then this is just declaring a variable. Then when we want to assign a value I equal to 10, we just initialize the variable I with a value of 10. In a similar manner, this int is a primitive data type, student is a non-primitive data type. The type of this data type is a class basically. It's a custom made class. It's a non-primitive data type. So when we want to initialize the class, what is that we are trying to initialize? We are trying to initialize the data members that are present inside the class. The data members that are present inside this class are the properties that are present inside the class are name and age. When we are trying to initialize it, we can initialize it manually like that, or else now we will use constructor. How a constructor is used. Whenever we want to use a constructor, one thing we want to remember is it's always public and it will have the same name as the class. It will have the same name as the class, but it will look like a method. It is looking like a method because we have using the round braces here. So this is the format of a class. This is the format of the constructor. So here what I will do is I will give a constructor, and when I am trying to initialize the value, I will try to initialize the values like this. Let me do it and then I'll try to explain. So I am passing parameters, some value my name and some value my age as the parameters to the constructor, and I am trying to assign these values to my properties here. My property is name equal to my name. I just assigned it, and the other property is age equal to my age. And this is a default constructor that Java will already provide. We don't have to define this constructor. And this is a parameterized constructor. So what happens if I remove this default constructor? The moment I remove this default constructor, Java is expecting two arguments because we just created a constructor and we said that the instance of the student class will have two attributes. Here we just mentioned instance of the student class is expecting two attributes which has to be passed. The first attribute would be a string attribute and the second attribute would be an integer attribute. So let's say for a second, we are not thinking about manually assigning the values. So because we just have the constructor here, I will say Mohan and I will give the value 20. We will have to notice here that the first value is a string which is stored in a parameter my name, and the second value is an integer which is stored in a parameter my age. From where this my name and my age are coming, we just define the constructor here. So Java understood that for the instance of the student class, the instance is S1, like in int I, when I equal to 10, integer I is taking only one value 10 here, but student class is taking two values, and these two values, first value is of type string and the second value is of type integer, and they are stored in these variables. So now what I can do is simply if I just do a sysout of s1 dot the first property and sysout of the second property, let's say s1 dot age, and if I try to run the program, I must be able to see these values assigned to the instance of the class, which is S1. Whenever I say instance, that means the object of the class, which is created using a new keyword. So Mohan and 20 are printed. So let's say Java will always have a default constructor. Let's say I am defining a default constructor. We don't have to define a default constructor, but let's say I have defined a default constructor. Let's see the behavior, how Java understands default constructor. So in this case, I'll try to run the program and let's see how the program flow goes. So here what I will do is we just looked at a default constructor. This is the default constructor in Java, and we also looked at the parameterized constructor. And let's say I'll give student s2 equal to new. I'm calling the default constructor here, new s2, and let me run the program. So the default constructor is called. How do we know that the default constructor is called? Whatever is present within the default constructor that has been executed. Let me revisit this statement once again. So before I didn't call the default constructor, you can see this student constructor, which is a default constructor, is grayed out. As soon as I try to call the default constructor, I have two constructor definitions available with me. This concept is called as constructor overloading. That means same constructor, same name, same method is available with two different kinds of definitions. First one has no parameters and second one has parameters. Here you can see first one has no parameters. It's what is the type when you see a variable. For example, when you see a variable name here, it will show string as the type. Here, this is of the type student. It's a non-primitive data type. This one is a parameterized constructor. It is still of the type student. So I can choose to call the first default constructor. As soon as I select this, this appears as highlighted. So when I run this, because default constructor is called after the parameterized constructor, so I'll get default constructor here. Let's say if I call this default constructor before the parameterized constructor and I'll try to run the program. As you can expect, what will happen is default constructor would be printed before the parameterized constructor, whatever values it is giving. So this is the difference between a default constructor, parameterized constructor, and constructor overloading. Now we will try to learn about a very important keyword, that is this keyword. So this constructor, when I have seen, this is my parameter and this is my variable. So I try to right click and generate a constructor. Automatically the IDE will give. It has two attributes. What has two attributes? My class. Here you see the icon C. My class has two attributes. These attributes are name is the first attribute, which is of type data type string. Second attribute is age, which is of data type int. I'll select both of them by pressing control. I have pressed the control button and I'm selecting both of them and I click OK. So it says constructor already exists. Okay. Now what I will try to do is I'll comment out this constructor and I will try to generate the constructor. This is automatically generating using the IDE. Any IDE, you can generate the constructor. Now we have a format here. You see string name equal to name, int age. Now we see this keyword, this dot name equal to name and this dot age equal to age. When you say this means we are referring to the current instance or the current object of the class. In the current object, this dot name is referring to this name and this dot age is referring to this age. You can also see the colors. It's color coded. That's how you will understand. And name is in white color. This is passed as the parameter. Age is passed as the parameter. Now, if we come here, you see name, it's no longer my name and this is no longer my age. Now it is changed to name and age. This is how a constructor is defined using this keyword, and this is the standard way of defining a constructor. Let me try to do one more thing. Right click, generate constructor. This time I will only select first variable. And next time what I will do is I'll try to generate another constructor. Generate constructor. I'll give age as the variable. So I have provision to give multiple constructors. So how do I use these constructors? I'll define another object, student S3 equal to new. Now you can see the concept of constructor overloading. Now we have four constructors defined, which are overloaded versions of each other. When you say overloaded versions, everything is of type student. First is a default constructor, which we called here. If you want, you can call this. Second is a constructor which is accepting only the age variable or the parameter. Third is accepting only the name parameter or the variable. And the fourth one is accepting both the parameters. So let me try to call this. Here, if I try to assign a string, automatically name will come. If I try to assign an integer, age will be assigned. And next constructor student S4 equal to new student of, let's say I give a name Krishna. Now what I will try to do is I'll try to print S3 dot. What does S3 object contain? It has age. Okay. So second thing what I'll try to do is S3 dot, I'll give name. Okay. Then, okay, let me run this. Then let's see what happens. So S3.age has given 30, S3.name has given null because for S3, we didn't assign any value for age, any value for name. Only for age, we have assigned a value. Similarly, if I call S4.name, as you can expect, we will get Krishna. Let me comment out these lines to be very clear on the output. So default constructor is being called from this line. If I comment out this line, because when you say student S2 equal to new student, we are indirectly calling this constructor and default constructor is printed. If I comment out that line, so we'll no longer expect default constructor to be called and Krishna is being displayed on the screen. Now let's say if I try to call S4 dot age, because this variable is available for this student class, but it's just that we didn't assign any value to it. When we don't assign any value, by default, the default value will be assigned. For string, the default value was null. But for age, which is an integer, the default value is 0. So 0 is assigned and it is printed on the console. Initially, it might seem a little bit confusing, but as we progress with the programs, this concept will get very clear. So this is how a default constructor looks like, a parameterized constructor looks like, and what is a this keyword? This is referring to the current instance or the current instance of the object. Then we will see the difference between a constructor and a method. We have a, let's say, public void student. Okay, I have defined a method here. Then I'll try to call this method from here. I don't have any instances created here. So I'll say s4 dot. This is a method. You can see the difference. Student is a method. I'll call this and I'll comment out these two lines and I'll try to run this. So I must see I am a method on the screen. I am a method on the screen. So what are the difference between the constructor and a method? A constructor will not have a return type. This doesn't have a return type, either void or int or string. There is no return type. And uh, a method has a return type. And a constructor will have the same name as the method, whereas my method name can be different. I can change this method as my details. When I change the name to my details, what I will do is I'll call the method with the method name s4 dot. The method name has changed, if you notice, and the return type is mentioned here. So these are the thumb rules or the differences between a constructor and a method. Constructor will have same name as the class, and method will not have the same name same name as the class, and a return type is the important thing. So these are the differences between a constructor and a method. So this is all I wanted to cover in this video. Constructors, default, parameterized, constructor overloading, this keyword, constructor versus method. In the next video, what we will try to do is we will try to cover the OOPS concepts, the first concept, that is encapsulation, in the next video. Thank you very much for watching the video till the end. Welcome to aArambh, your gateway to the coding career, which would be a roadmap to the IT world. All the best to your career. Thank you once again.